We looked at tablets and light pens, which not very around anymore. This is an old study as you're going. What do you think the number one input device was for the following users? We developed three categories: the casual user, the hacker, and the in-betweener, basically, someone who's on their way to being a hacker. Okay, a casual user, in our definition, used a computer less than 8 hours a week, a hacker more than 8 hours a week, and we thought that was pretty reasonable. If I were to ask you, how many of you use a computer more than 8 hours a week on your job? A lot of hackers here, high power hacks. Okay, now the other half are casual users. Now a hacker, let's start with a hacker. What's the number one input device? Keyboard, absolutely. 97% of the hackers want a keyboard with a pointing device. Okay, and they don't care what the pointing device is. It can be a mouse, a light pen, or whatever. Everybody has thumb wheels. It doesn't matter, but keyboard's number one. What you want is to be programs to basically program the keyboards in a macro sense so you can make it powerful for your own image. So your structured query language, you ought to have keyboards with macro commands that go to any application program and you're using the same keyboard functions. Okay. Now, casual user, what do you think their number one input device was? Great. Boy, this is the first time that's been a predominant answer. And 2 or 3 years ago, everyone said tablet because they went up on this floor and what did they see? Tablets everywhere. But in reality, part of why Apple succeeded is because everything was icon-based and it was a mouse. A mouse is for a left-handed or right-handed person. There's no discrimination. Whereas a digitizing tablet, any lefties here? Southpaws? Okay, digitizing tablets, do you find them prejudiced towards you? It's always in the wrong spot. You'd like to mirror image it. Okay, well, this is some of the problems just in terms of user interface. But make a long story short, at Harvard, we found that 73% of the casual users preferred mice with keyboard. Okay, so it's sort of reversed order. And then there were about 12% that liked tablets. By the way, some people did like tablets better, et cetera, et cetera. Now, one of the things that we tried to do, and if you look at such a thing as called a structured query language, all right, at Harvard, we found that the biggest problem was trying to get people educated in the software. Okay, if you're going to create a database, you've got to make sure that everybody uses the database. It's sort of feast or famine. Everybody's got to do it to maintain it, to make the thing work. Now, in 1982, I went away for a 5-day Lotus course, because back then that was pretty tough stuff. Okay, I came back to my office, had a foot of mail. It was 3 weeks before I could touch Lotus again. How much of Lotus do you think I remembered? Now, I think I'm a pretty smart guy, but next to nothing, bottom line. How I eventually learned Lotus, I looked over someone's shoulder, they showed me the 10 commands. Basically, I cheated. Okay, so if I were to have a badge here, Cheaters of America, that's how you become successful in automation. What do you think your management would think about that? Okay, well, as it turns out, okay, we've trained over 27,000 people now. What we've developed and what we believe in, and you should do for your own office, is to develop cheat sheets. We were working with 2 Harvard PhD professors, and the lady said, well, you can't call them cheat sheets. That sounds so negative. People think of, writing on your arm or inside your loafer or whatever else. You have to call it crib notes. Now, when I say crib note, what we're talking about is a 1 or 2 page document that tells people how to get in, get their data out, and close out. Basically, get in, get out real fast. Now, the best way we find to train people or educate people is to develop crib sheets to gain access to your database. Now, what the structured query language is a uniform interface that basically allows you to give them a page worth of directions so they're always looking at the same screen. All right? Net result is training costs, we find, have dropped about 75%. And literacy has increased about 30%. Those are heavy, heavy hitters. So you want to take crib sheets combined with SQL or a natural language of any sort to gain really mind share of the people on your staffs. Any questions on that? The final component that came along in 1988, 89, okay, and for instance, we were down at Sandy with Sandy Nelson, who was the senior vice president of Bristol Myers. Any Bristol Myers Squibbs people here? Okay, at Bristol Myers Squibb, he happened to be one of IBM's biggest buyers and Apple's biggest buyers. He was working with us. He said, great, we want to have a CAFM system. But he said, I want everything to be icon-based, 100% icon-based. Well, at the time, there was no such critter. Today, there is. All right, well, you should go up on the floor and start looking at some of those solutions, and that's called hypermedia. That means anybody can sit on a regular IBM PC and look at a CAD drawing even though they're not owning a CAD system. That they can look at a database even though they don't own a database. Why? Because you're able to capture graphics and non-graphics and treat it as an executive information system through what's called hypermedia. Okay, so you should go out and look at things like hypermedia. Questions on that? Okay. And then finally, the last component is that you want to tie into existing systems. 42% of a facilities manager database is already built. It's just that it's owned by human resources or the telecommunications group or the MIS group or the marketing group. Everybody else outside in another organization within the same company has built up data that is meaningful and useful to you. You should be able to import that in from their machines. So you want to create an open architecture gateway to capture their data. The net result is that it reduces your database creation and manipulation costs by 42%. Okay? So what we've just covered in this one image, and we'll cover it a little bit later as a recap, and it's in your drawing, you want to have audit trail. You want to have centralized database. You want to have structured query language. You want to have crib notes, hypermedia, and then connection to existing decision support systems. So this one figure has 6 different things you sort of should be comparing. Now, I'm not advocating that your architecture, system architecture, should look just like this. I'm just saying you should have some of these similar components. Some of them may or may not work for you, but you should at least examine them. All right? Any questions on this? Okay. Let's keep on going. Is this too slow? Is this good or is this fast? Keep same peel? Keep going. Okay. Now, if you look at programs effective, what type of tools do you need to start building up your CAFM database? All right, and really the tools that you're talking about have to be fairly straightforward. In developing a facilities management database, all right, there are many, many different CAD systems. If I were to ask people what the CAD system, how many people have AutoCAD? How many have Intergraph? DataCAD? VersaCAD? Aries? Okay, any other systems? I don't mean to slight anyone. CADM, okay, it must be a big company. CADvance, I'm sorry? CADvance, okay. All right, well, what we're finding, and we deal with a lot of corporations. I mean, we've got, with over 20,000 users, you tend to find out real fast what they like. We're finding the majority of the world is switching to an AutoCAD base. Now, is AutoCAD the best solution out there? I don't think it matters. What's happening is there's just by landslide growing through. It's probably, in my opinion, in AutoCAD, we're so close to AutoCAD, I'm afraid to say anything. The AutoCAD Expo's down the hall. AutoCAD on a scale of 1 to 10, in release 10, on a scale of 1 to 10, was probably only a 6. Release 11 makes it maybe a 9 or 10, okay? Because it has a thing called ADS drivers capability. Now the trouble is you're going to have to rewrite all your existing code to make the thing work, okay? Which can be very, very costly. Now, to me, we don't care. At my firm, I have 7 different CAD systems. I'm sorry, correction, 6. I just sold one. And, we bought a mainframe system for $792,000 in 1982. I sold it last year for $9,000. They wanted scrap part. By the way, they were going to charge me $6,000, the moving company, to come and haul it away. Okay? But basically, what we're finding is that most CAD systems sort of leapfrog. So what you want to do is to not be prejudicial towards any CAD system. You want to go with what works and what's uniformly easy for people to use. Now, one thing I will say in general, PC-based CAD systems like CADvance and EasyCAD and VersaCAD and AutoCAD are really usually easier to educate people on. It's been our experience. We have 4 mainframe systems, mini systems. Usually the training time is about 2.5 times longer than a PC because they have more capabilities in different areas. All right, with a PC, usually you can go in, show them what they need to do, and get out real fast. All right. So, but one of the things you want to do is to really look at the CAD systems and systems overlays, etc. Now, tools you really need to do is DOS, mainframe operating systems. Today, you might want to have to look at Unix or the Mac operating systems, etc. You have to get text editors. You have to have spreadsheet capabilities, CAD capabilities, database capabilities, schedule activities, associated text capabilities, and query utilities. What I'm talking about are toolkits. These are the things that you're going to need to really develop a solution. And again, I say AutoCAD here just because the majority of the world's AutoCAD. AutoCAD claims what, an 83% ownership of the market now or something? Any AutoCAD reps here? I don't keep track of all these numbers. I think that's the number of stations, not the dollar volume or something like that. Who knows what it is? But these are tools. Now, in particular, you have three of them. You have schedule utilities, associated text, and query. A schedule utility, what we're talking about is the ability to take data, that's on the next page of the handout, take information from your drawing. So here we have an example of a door. Okay, what I'd like to be able to do is extract that out, put it into a schedule, and then manipulate it through DBase, a Lotus, or a line editor, etc. When I'm all done, result, post it back in, and have it appear on my drawing. All right, this is bidirectional scheduling. Now, we did this for about 3 years, and again, College of Hard Knocks tells us, boy, did we mess up. What happens to CAD drawings when you load up a lot of text on them, or attributes? Anybody, run the miracle mile on this one? It's tough, okay? In reality, how many 20 minutes for a regen? You go out for a long smorgasbord lunch at that point. Okay, one of the things that we found is that that was the wrong way. Here you had a CAD system, you load a lot of attributes, it really slows down. What you really want to be able to do is to keep 95% of your data where it belongs in a database and import it only when you need it. All right? So you should really focus on that type of capability. It's really critical. Now, the second thing that we found, so what I'm saying is that there should be, when you devise your database for your drawings, we recommend that you set up a hierarchical database schema with primary, secondary, and tertiary attributes. Primary attributes are usually 2 to 3% of your attributes, but they should be always on your drawing. These are your keyword identifiers for referencing, entity handles, etc. Depending on which CAD system you have, everyone uses different terminology, so I won't. But these are the things that you see on your drawings all the time. Secondary attributes are things that are sort of like an on-off switch. If you want to see them there, you can pull them in, or if you don't want to see them there, you sort of keep them off the drawing. And that should account for around 10 to 12% of your database is what we recommend. And then 85% of your database should be tertiary, 85 plus. Now, when I say 85%, it means it should always reside in the database, but with bidirectional capabilities, I can always import the results and show it on my drawing. And that's called bidirectional input, all right? Net result is that you save about 45 to 60% of your operating time in your CAD environment. So you've basically doubled the speed at which you're able to do things just by extracting the text off. Have people already started doing that, found that this is really the case? Okay. All right. Anybody disagree with what I'm saying? You're more than welcome to challenge me. I don't care. It's good to go for it. All right. Good heated argument will wake everybody up. Okay. Now, the next thing is associated text. What we found, remember I said 42% of the data is owned by other people, okay, and other databases, etc. Wouldn't it be nice to take a floor plan, and we did this for a large insurance company. They were noticing, the director of human resources was noticing a high percent of sickness. Well, what they were able to do is because you could import it into your CAD drawing, sick days, map it out, okay, in a query, what they were able to find out that on one particular floor there was a 30% higher sickness. What they were suffering for was building sickness syndrome. Okay, basically what they had done in the mid-'80s when an energy crisis was sort of in vogue, they shut the outside vent and just recirculated stale air. Well, that's sort of an easy fix out. They basically opened up the vent, and lo and behold, the sickness days dropped. They say, well, we're finding the same type of thing in facilities. IFPA in 1986 reported in, I think it was report number 1 or 2, there's actually 22 application areas for facilities management. Can everybody be an expert in all 22 concurrently? We sort of doubt it. So what we recommend is to create what we call core curricula. Now, your core curricula should really evolve around 3 things: spatial management, non-spatial management, and base design, documentation type of activities. And what we found is that we broke it out into space management. What is in space management? We have such things as space inventory, where you go out and find out what you own. You have space forecasting, how much you're going to need, space allocation, space layout. You have design, okay, and then you have furniture and equipment. Well, furniture and equipment indeed really I just ran out of room on the foil should have the same type of thing of inventory, space, allocation, layout, etc. But basically, if you understand these three core curriculas, okay, you ought to be able to be in pretty good shape. Now, what we've done is we've gotten this down to an arts and science. I can typically train one of my new architects to become a facilities type operator in less than 1 week. I train them just in the 3 basic food groups here. Okay, we'll call it 3 basic food groups so you'll remember it. All right. Now, this went along, and then we said, well, wait a minute. If I have truly a casual user, they don't even want to learn that. Why should they have to learn how to do space management if they're doing furniture? So what we devised was the technique that either we'll train, if they're doing furniture and equipment tracking, they'll learn design and facilities management. If they're doing spatial tracking, they'll learn basically space inventory and design. Okay, so that we even got it down to fewer days. That still wasn't good enough. They said, look, I want to be able to get in, get out 4 hours or less. You ever have to train people like this? I mean, they basically want to get in, get out. What we devised was this facilities information management system that tied to hypermedia, tied to structured query language. I can train someone now to go in, make a manipulation, get out in less than 4 hours with no training at all. Okay. How do you do that? You keep it simple, basically fewer than 5 buttons to do anything, and use an icon interface. How many of you are using Windows right now? Okay. Windows are a powerful friend of basically making hostile environments more friendly. In 2 or 3 years, you're going to, if I ask the same question, you're going to see almost everybody will probably be using Windows. Now, the other question that was asked, someone asked me before the session began, talk to us about DOS, Unix, and OS2. How many of you are using Unix right now? How many are using DOS? And how many are using OS2? Okay, that's sort of your answer. Basically, right now, MS-DOS, albeit is graded on a 1 to 10, it's probably a 6. See, I'm real hard, by the way. It's probably a 5 or 6. It's not the most friendly environment, but it's a standard. And because it's a standard, you have to live with it, and you just make the best to do about it. So a lot of what we recommend right now is don't even consider any other environment. Stay in DOS, because typically your peers are in MS-DOS world, and you don't have to pay for special customization because someone else has already paid for it. There's safety in numbers, sort of the big blue mindset. You know, why did people buy IBM? They never got fired for buying it. I mean, that's the old standby. It gets approved real fast as it goes. I have 4 members of my family working for IBM, so I won't take too many shots at them. But I worked at IBM for 4 years and had a hard time dealing with it. But I'm just not a company man. What can I say? Okay, now in a hypermedia environment, again, it goes back to basics. What you want to be able to do is instantaneously tie in alphanumerics with graphics. And that's really the strength of what you're doing. Okay, you have to be able to touch a button, get the graphic, touch another button, get the database. Flip, 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 flip. Why is it important to have both worlds at your fingertips? Very simply, a lot of things are just easier to do in alphanumeric format than they are in graphics. Is that a fair statement? Okay, if graphically I was trying to tell you what color that wall is, do you think I'd have a pretty good success rate? What do you think? Can anybody graphically describe what color that wall is? Okay, how about what color the carpet is? You want to graphically describe that? Okay, there are some modifiers that you really need to be able to articulate in a alphanumeric format. So that's why you need connectivity between the alphanumeric and the graphics. Okay? All right. So, how are we doing? Is everybody, you want to take a few minute break here? Are we sort of blowing you away, or how are we doing? Okay. We're going to walk real fast through some additional information, just so you're aware of it. Okay, if you're talking about such things as creating furniture and equipment layout, or you're talking about space allocation or space forecasting, these are not on your handouts. These are just overviews. I'm sorry, I'm hearing all the scurry of flurry. These are just background information. You talk about such things as layout. You're talking about such things as facilities resource files. Well, in reality, okay, 95% of our facilities managers out there are in an alphanumeric world. The alphanumeric world, #1 third-party application for facilities managers as far as technical is spreadsheet. All right, not CAD. Not database, but spreadsheet. Is that good? Probably not. But in my office, I have a partner that uses a spreadsheet for database, word processing, and spreadsheets, coincidentally. Okay, what it means is he learned one package and that's it. Is that a problem? You bet. Okay, what you want to do is do a little housekeeping and make sure you sort of kick people out of their old habits. Now, is that going to be a hard one? You bet. Okay, now we'll talk about it a little bit later, but okay, now one of the ways you can do that, we found, to get rid of the old habits is to make parallel environments for them so it's real easy to switch over. Okay, so here, for instance, we have a spreadsheet environment. This happens to be just showing forecasting, and this is basically, you can take a forecast and you do space projections, and what we're doing is we sort of formalize, if you're doing space planning, what it is that they do in a spreadsheet, so that they wind up with forecast averaging, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, having done that, what we're then able to do is to tie it into the database, into graphics almost instantaneously. So you hit one button in our system, and what it does is it produces the graphic. Now, if you've got them hooked on graphics, is it easy to then slide them away from Lotus? Usually is yes. Okay, so what we do is we sort of take them from the Lotus, and it's sort of like the perpetual. The guy's hooked on Lotus, he wants to hold on to it no matter what, and the desk just sort of goes with him. No, don't take it away. Let me hold on to it. Let me hold on to it. But in reality, once you get them away from the Lotus, the best way we find to do is to give them a good database interface, a structured query language, and graphics, and usually it's easy to wean them off the Lotus. Now, I'm not saying Lotus is bad. What I'm talking about is the abusers of Lotus, where they use it for everything. Okay, it's real hard to document and to make a Lotus error-proof. I mean, have you done? How many people have done a lot of macro coding in Lotus? Okay, is it real easy to protect fields and stuff like that in such a way that nobody can sabotage it? Never mind, make it sabotage-proof, right? I mean, we tried it. In the old days, we would lock out fields. The Lotus 2.0 had a lot of capabilities, and 3.0 certainly does. But the trouble is that by the time you do all that work, you would have been better off weaning them off of it, put them in a database. All right. Well, both are sort of a good solution. And in reality, you had things like Symfony and Framework that came out, and they were both failures. Why? Because they were too powerful at the time. I suspect if they were reintroduced today, they'd be a little bit more widely accepted. But basically, what we're trying to do is get people to use mixed media. Now, the four primary media that I'm talking about is CAD, word processing, spreadsheets, and databases. These are the basic four. A fifth would be probably project management or project scheduling. If you have those 5 application tools under your belt, for today you have 65 to 70% of what a facilities manager needs, and that's it. Okay, and I would sort of do a staircase approach and start there. All right. Now, if you were to continue through, one of the things we found is that you can evolve your affinity mapping, stacking, blocking, etc. Other types of things. These are some of the byproducts of what you will create in the database for your clients. Stacking and blocking. You want to do affinity chargebacks, space chargebacks, etc. You want to show growth and shrinkage. Okay, so here you have absolute growth of each department. So that I know from last year to previous year, this one shrunk, this one grew. You want to find percentage of growth and shrinkage. Now, why facilities managers are interested in this type of stuff? Very simple. They have people lie to them. Okay? What they do is they have managers that say, hey, I'm going to need 5 extra spaces. All right? At the end of the year, those 5 spaces are still empty. That next year, they say the same thing. I need 5 extra spaces. Why? Because people are space hoards. How many people have had people volunteer space back to them? Okay? Because you do chargeback. Okay? Oh, I'm going to have to pay you $5. Why is chargeback important? Absolutely. Now, right now, less than 20% of the corporations are doing effective chargeback. By the end of the decade, everybody will be, for that exact reason. When I say chargeback, just to repeat, her answer was chargeback. She's absolutely right. In the past, companies just assumed real estate as an overhead item, okay, or land. They didn't really charge back the lease value. Today, roughly about 20% are charging back. By the end of the decade, it's estimated closer to 95% will do chargebacks. Why? Because you're trying to motivate people to tell you when they really don't need the space that they have. Okay? We have over 300 universities as clients. The worst offenders are professors. Okay? Any professors here? Space is the ultimate frontier for a professor. If you have space, you're powerful. Seriously, that's the ultimate ranking. Okay? Now, what the biggest problem is, we were dealing with the UC system. They estimated they had 3.5 million square feet that was not effectively being billable. What would happen is they would give a research grant, give a person space. When the research grant expired, they would have the space for 2 or 3 years after. All right. When I say research grant, basically they got NSF grants. Most universities take up to 70% of a grant as overhead dollar. Okay, and it goes into rent, et cetera, et cetera. They were able to, bottom line to it, the UC system, the very first year of chargeback, were able to recoup 1.5 million square feet. How much is 1.5 million square feet worth of leased dollars? I don't even know. You're in New York. What's New York, 1.5 million square feet? I think we're on Madison. I have an office 600 Madison Ave. I think we're paying $60 with all the porter wage. And New York is great. You pay a lease rate that's only $15, but they catch you on the extras. You can pay $45 in extras if you're not careful. Fair statement? I mean, it's awesome. Okay. Now, if you look at drawings and things like that, okay, that was sort of the database. The idea, you want to start them in spreadsheets, bring them over to the CAD world. In the CAD world, what you want to be able to do is to look at drawing information, as-builts, et cetera, in which case the types of drawings that space managers are really into, they're not really into the architectural drawings, to be candid with you. What they're more interested in is the occupancy drawings or the inventory drawings of the furniture assets and things like that. Okay, so that 70%, up to 70% of what you, the architects and engineers, provide to the facilities manager, they effectively table. I'm not saying they throw it away, but it's in their filing cabinets. Because on a day-to-day basis, they don't need to know where the HVAC is. They're better off stripping that out of the drawing, and when they're renovating part of the floor, bring it back in. So what you do is getting into a sophisticated drawing management system. Well, what we did is we rewrote, because we had 7 different CAD systems, an effective drawing management system that took care of all the automatic layering and stuff like that. We found roughly 11% of the drawings were contaminated because people put wrong information on wrong layers. You know, it was sort of the 12th hour, and they put the doors, the windows, the walls all on the same layer. Next morning, when the guy plotted it out, didn't know that that should have been on that layer. So 7% of my plots are bad plots. Well, anybody have these problems? Okay, you know, the most frustrating thing is when you plot a drawing without the doors when you wanted the doors, et cetera, and you don't find out till the next morning, and you get yelled at by management. Well, what you want is effective drawing management tools that you say, I want this series plotted out where everything goes there. Now, at Young Brandon, what we've done is we've hardwired everything through open lists, rather, so that when I put a door, it goes to the right door automatically. I put a wall, it goes to the right wall. When I fix a wall, it's done. My polylines, my room symbols, my furniture, everything is fully managed. And that result is anybody can go to any drawing and get the same result out. Okay, so you want what's called the database creation guide, and we'll cover that right after the break. Okay, so you want to be able to do that. Now, other things you want with most systems is you want the ability to be able to drop in what are called space standards, and these are just corporate space standards, the average size, and then you stretch it, manipulate it. Have the machine automatically add the walls for you, fix the walls, the wall fixes. You shouldn't have to go in and touch walls anymore to fix it. It should be automatic. All right? You ought to be able to go in, automatically put in doors automatically, reflected ceiling automatically. You shouldn't have to go in and deal with these types of things. And then what you want to be able to do is to go into the third tier, actually have your furniture standards pop in, be able to extract those out, and get the 2 to 3D representations of those instantaneously. Now, this is sort of where you're trying to head. What I'm going to do after the break is basically we're going to come back, roll up our sleeves, and go into hardcore how to make this thing work in a cost-effective way, how to go back and start implementing a staircase approach. So when you're done with this, within 3 weeks to 4 weeks, you'll have a database creation guide that you can live with and ultimately save a lot of money. Okay, that's what we're really trying to do. Talking about is how people view things. Now, when I say macro, micro, and the other, and let's go macro, micro, detail, and then supplemental environment. Now, we know with CAFM databases, many different people are going to be using the same type of data. Okay, they're going to be using different data. If I'm an urban designer, okay, what's my macro world? Probably 10 miles around a city, maybe. I mean, just to, you know, you're looking at the big, or actually that would be a regional planner, or urban designer might be 2 miles radius around a city, all the information relevant. A micro view might be, 20 city blocks, 20 blocks of information. A detail view might be one block, and a supplemental view might be individual building. Now, if I'm an architect doing design for a building, I might start at the 20 block radius. My micro view might be a block. My detail view might be a building. And a supplemental might be the individual floors. If I'm an interior designer, hey, all I really care about is the building, the individual floors, maybe the departments, maybe individual rooms, okay? If I'm interested in telecommunications, what's my macro world? Well, usually it might be the substation that comes into the building, so I know what's hitting it. But then I would really probably start sort of at the building level, the floor, and then really the headset location or type or panel box, et cetera, et cetera. What I'm trying to draw and try to make you think about is that people will look at the same data differently. So if I say black and white, oops, I'm going to have to give my elephant joke. I see you sort of stretching your head. I asked my niece, what's the difference? This is when she was 4. She's now 6, so she wouldn't say it, of course. What's the difference between your Uncle Bruce and an elephant? Her answer is very simple. Well, you have a beard. So in other words, I'm an elephant, and I apologize if I'm in your way. It's real hard. I am a large person. I don't know what the modern modifier for big and fat is. Big person, I suppose. But in general, what we're talking about, okay, is that many different people look at different things in the same way. Now, in the same fashion, as you start talking about database schema, okay, if you look at similarities here, and let's just sort of highlight, okay, when you look at floor information, okay, across the board, an architect will look at floor information differently than an interior designer, different than the telecommunications specialist, different than the facilities manager, et cetera, et cetera. Now, a facilities manager, okay, which of these do you think a facilities manager is most like? Okay, what do you think? Yeah, a lot of people say interiors, but I would suspect it's also all of them. Okay, it's a trick question. I'm sorry about that. I love to throw trick questions. You have billing procedures, work orders, facility scheduling, security systems, key and lock system, employee access cards, visitor log, loading dock, forecasting, profiles, technology links, DSS, CAD, MIS.